Tonight, you find yourself inside a quiet Victorian house. The world outside has already gone still. The streets are empty, softened by darkness, and whatever noise remains feels distant, unimportant. Inside, the air is calm. Nothing rushes here. There is no electricity humming in the walls, no blowing screens, only the slow passage of time, marked by softer things. If you like, you can close your eyes now, or simply let your gaze rest somewhere comfortable. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. Just listen and drift. The last light of day has already slipped away. In a Victorian home, evening doesn't end suddenly, it fades gently and gradually. At first, there is still enough daylight to move about without concern, but slowly, shadows begin to stretch, corners grow dim, and the house itself seems to quiet down. A single candle is lit, then another. Their light is soft, unsteady, never quite filling the room, only pushing back the darkness just enough. You might notice how different this feels from modern light. It doesn't dominate the space. It coexists with shadow, drawn gently and naturally in its direction. The warmth reaches you before anything else. It isn't strong, not the kind that fills the whole room, but a soft, steady warmth that lingers quietly in the air, as if it has been there for hours already. As you step a little further inside, the sitting room begins to reveal itself more clearly. Not all at once, never all at once. The candlelight doesn't allow that. Instead, it shows you things slowly, piece by piece. A wooden chair stands nearby, its surface worn smooth with time. A small table rests beside it, holding a single candle whose flame now burns more steadily than before. The light it gives off is gentle, almost careful, as if it doesn't wish to disturb the quiet. You find yourself sitting without much thought. The chair feels firm beneath you, familiar in a way that's hard to explain. The cushion offers just enough softness to be comfortable without drawing any attention. There's no need to adjust, no need to move. It simply holds you there. For a while, everything remains still. Then, gradually, the smallest sounds begin to surface. A clock somewhere in the room marks the passing of time. Tick, and then, after a quiet pause, another. The rhythm is slow, unchanging, almost soothing in its consistency. It doesn't ask anything of you. It simply continues. Nearby, someone else may be present. You don't look directly, but you sense them. Perhaps they are seated across the room, partially hidden in shadow. Now and then, a faint sound rises, the soft turning of a page, before the silence settles again. No one feels the need to speak. The quiet here is not empty. It feels complete. The candle flame bends slightly for a moment, and the shadows along the walls shift in response, stretching, softening, then returning to stillness. Your eyes follow those slow movements without effort, and before long, your attention begins to drift once again, gently guided toward that same quiet warmth, waiting just beyond.
Gently guided toward that same quiet warmth, waiting just beyond. As your attention drifts closer, the source of that warmth slowly comes into view. A small hearth rests along the far wall, its fire no longer bright, but still quietly alive. The flames move slowly now, curling around the darkened wood in soft, unhurried motions. Earlier, they may have burned higher, more energetic, but at this hour they seem content to settle. There is no rush left in them, only a steady glow. You remain where you are, simply watching. The light from the fire is different from the candlelight. It feels deeper, warmer, shifting in slow, uneven rhythms that gently touch the walls, the floor, and the edges of the room. It never stays still for long. If you listen closely, you can hear it. A faint crackle, soft and irregular as the wood slowly gives way. Now and then, a quiet shift, a small collapse of ember sending a brief flicker upward before settling again. The sound is subtle but comforting. It fills the silence without breaking it. After a while, someone leans forward slightly. You notice the movement only in passing, a quiet presence near the fire. A small iron tool is used to adjust the logs, not hurriedly, not forcefully, just enough to keep the embers close together. The flames respond with a soft glow, brightening for a moment, before returning to their slower rhythm. No words are spoken. There's no need. The warmth reaches you again, gentle and steady, and for a moment it feels as though the entire room is breathing slowly with the fire. Time continues to pass, but here it doesn't feel important. Nothing needs to happen next. And as the glow softens just a little more, your attention begins to drift again, following the quiet rhythm of the house deeper into the night. For a while, the warmth of the fire holds your attention, but gradually something else begins to take its place. A faint, familiar scent drifts through the air, soft, subtle, but unmistakable. It seems to come from just beyond the sitting room, perhaps from a nearby table where a simple evening meal has been laid out. Nothing elaborate, nothing rich or overwhelming, just something warm and quiet, prepared without hurry. You don't feel especially hungry, not in the usual sense, but the presence of the meal feels natural, like part of the evening itself. After a moment, you rise, not quickly, not with any urgency, but slowly, almost as if the room itself is guiding you forward. The candlelight shifts gently as you move, stretching shadows across the floor, then letting them fall back into place behind you. The table is small, neatly arranged. A modest dish rests at its center. Perhaps something simple like bread, a bit of cheese, or a warm broth that still carries a trace of steam. Nothing here demands attention. Everything feels calm, expected. You take a seat once more. The chair is much like the one before, firm, steady, familiar. For a while, there is only quiet. Then slowly, the smallest sounds return. The faint clink of a spoon, the soft movement of fabric, the gentle shifting of the table beneath resting hands. Each sound is careful, unhurried, blending easily into the stillness. No conversation rises to meet it. There is no need. The meal is not about speaking or even thinking. It is simply something that happens, part of the evening's quiet routine. The warmth of the food is gentle, not much different from the fading heat of the fire, and for a moment the two seem to exist together, both soft, both steady. Time passes without notice. Nothing changes quickly, and as the last small movements at the table begin to settle, your awareness drifts once more, carried gently toward the next quiet moment waiting somewhere in the house. For a little while longer, the table remains just as it is. Nothing feels rushed. The last traces of warmth linger in the food, in the air, in the quiet presence of the room itself.
The candlelight rests softly over everything, giving each object a gentle, unchanging glow. Then, almost without notice, a small movement begins. A hand reaches forward, slowly, and lifts a dish from the table. There is no sound at first, only the quiet motion of something being carried away. Another follows, just as carefully, and then another. The process is unhurried, steady, as though there is no reason to finish quickly. Each movement feels measured, almost thoughtful, even in its simplicity. You remain seated for a moment, watching without really focusing, your attention drifting in and out of the scene. The faintest sounds begin to return, a soft clink of ceramic, the gentle brush of fabric against wood, a quiet footstep crossing the floor. Each one rises and fades again, never breaking the calm. Soon the table begins to clear. Where there had been small signs of activity, now there is only open space once more. The surface looks as it did before, simple, undisturbed, almost as if nothing had happened at all. The candle remains. Its flame leans slightly, then steadies again. For a moment, everything pauses. No one speaks. No one needs to. The room settles back into stillness, deeper than before, as though the small task has gently drawn the evening closer to its end. You feel it too, that quiet shift, not something you can see, but something you can sense. The night is moving forward, slowly, naturally, without effort. And as the last faint sounds disappear completely, your attention begins to drift once again, following the quiet rhythm of the house, further into the calm of the night. For a moment, nothing stirs. The cleared table rests in silence, the candle burning low, the room holding on to its stillness as though it has nowhere else to go. Then, gently, almost imperceptibly, movement returns. A chair shifts slightly across the floor. Not loudly, just enough to be heard if you're listening for it. Someone rises. You don't see them clearly, only the suggestion of motion in the soft light, a figure passing slowly through shadow and glow. There is no urgency in the way they move. Each step is careful, measured, as if the quiet itself is something not to be disturbed. After a moment, you find yourself doing the same. You stand, slowly, without effort, as though it is simply the next natural thing to do. The room feels different now that you're upright, a little cooler, a little more distant from the warmth of the fire and the table, but still calm, always calm. You begin to walk. The wooden floor beneath your feet responds softly, a faint creak here, a gentle shift there. Sounds that feel familiar rather than intrusive. They don't echo, they don't linger, they simply exist, then fade away. The candlelight moves with you, stretching your shadow along the wall, then letting it fall away as you pass beyond its reach. The hallway ahead is dimmer, quieter. The air feels still, untouched, as though it has been waiting. You pause there for just a moment, not because you need to, but because the stillness invites it. Behind you, the sitting room remains softly lit, warm and settled, holding the last traces of the evening. Ahead, the house grows quieter still. And without thinking, without any need to decide, you take another slow step forward, allowing the silence to guide you deeper into the night. The hallway stretches quietly ahead, dim and undisturbed. Only a faint glow reaches this far, just enough to trace the edges of the walls and the gentle lines of the floor beneath your feet. The air feels cooler here, still, as though it has settled into place long ago. After a few slow steps, the staircase comes into view. It rises softly into shadow, each step worn smooth with time. There is no sound for a moment.
Then, carefully, you place your foot on the first step. A faint creak answers, low and familiar, not sharp or sudden, but something expected, almost comforting in its presence. You pause briefly, not out of caution, but simply to listen. Nothing else moves. The house remains quiet, patient. Then you continue, one step, then another. Each movement is slow, unhurried, the soft rhythm of your steps blending gently with the stillness around you. The wooden staircase responds in the same quiet way, a subtle shift here, a faint sound there, never breaking the calm. As you rise, the air changes slightly. It feels cooler, lighter somehow, carrying none of the warmth from below. The light fades too. By the time you reach the landing, only a soft, distant glow remains behind you, barely reaching the landing now. Up here, everything is quieter. The space opens gently into a small landing, simple and still, with closed doors resting along the walls. Each one remains undisturbed, holding its own quiet darkness inside. You don't feel the need to open any of them. There is no curiosity pulling you forward, only a calm awareness of where you are. You stand there for a moment, listening. Nothing answers. And yet the silence doesn't feel empty, it feels complete. After a while, your attention shifts again, drawn softly toward one particular doorway, slightly closer than the others, as though the night itself is guiding you there, without ever asking you to follow. You remain still for just a moment longer, standing on the quiet landing. The air here feels softer somehow, cooler than before, yet calm, undisturbed by anything beyond these walls. Behind you, the faint glow from below has almost disappeared now, leaving only a dim trace along the staircase. Ahead, the doorway waits. It doesn't stand out in any obvious way. Like the others, it is simple, closed, resting quietly in shadow. And yet, without quite knowing why, your attention remains there, gently held. After a while, you begin to move again. Your steps are slow, careful, not out of caution but out of habit, as though the quiet itself asks for nothing more than softness. The floor beneath you answers in the same way as before, a faint, familiar creak, then stillness again. When you reach the door, you pause, not because anything is uncertain, but because there's no need to hurry what comes next. Your hand lifts, slowly, and rests against the surface. The wood feels cool, smooth in places, worn in others, carrying the quiet memory of years gone by. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, gently, you press. The door opens without resistance, just a soft movement, a quiet shift that reveals the room beyond. At first, it is mostly shadow. The candlelight from the hall only reaches so far, touching the edge of a bed, the outline of a small table, the faint shape of a window beyond. You step inside. The air feels different here, still, quiet, settled in a deeper way. Behind you, the door remains slightly open, letting in just enough light to soften the darkness, but not enough to disturb it. You don't move very far. There's no need. The room seems to welcome stillness, to hold it gently in place. And as your eyes begin to adjust, the quiet of this space settles around you, guiding you naturally toward rest, without ever asking for it. For a moment, you remain where you are, just inside the doorway. Nothing in the room feels unfamiliar. It's quiet in a deeper way than the rest of the house, as though the stillness here has had more time to settle. The faint light from the hall stretches only a little way across the floor, stopping gently before it reaches the far wall. Beyond that, the room rests in soft shadow, calm and undisturbed. As your eyes slowly adjust, the shapes begin to form more clearly.
A bed stands alongside the room, simple in its design, neatly arranged, as though it has been waiting. The fabric appears smooth, undisturbed, holding no sign of movement. Nearby, a small table rests quietly, holding a single candle that has not yet been lit. The air feels cool, but not cold, still, but not empty. You take a few slow steps forward. The floor responds softly beneath you, the same gentle creak as before, familiar now, almost expected. It doesn't break the silence, only blends into it. After a moment, you come to a stop beside the bed. There is no urgency to sit, no sense of needing to do anything at all. You simply stand there, noticing the quiet. Outside, beyond the window, the night continues, though no sound reaches in. Whatever movement exists in the world beyond these walls feels distant, separate, as if it belongs to another place entirely. Inside, everything remains still. The door behind you stays slightly open, allowing just enough of the hallway's dim light to rest along the edge of the room. Nothing shifts, nothing changes. And yet, without effort, without any clear moment of decision, your attention begins to settle further, gently drawing you closer to the quiet comfort of the bed beside you. You don't rush toward it. Nothing in the room encourages haste. Instead, your movements slow even more, as if the atmosphere itself is guiding you into a softer rhythm. The bed stands exactly as it was, simple, steady, unchanged. The sheets are neatly arranged, their surface smooth and undisturbed, catching only the faintest touch of light from the doorway. You place a hand lightly on the edge. The fabric feels cool at first, then slowly warms beneath your touch. There is no sound in the room now except for the quiet awareness of your own presence. Even that feels softened, distant, as though the room is gently absorbing it. After a moment, you sit. The mattress gives slightly beneath your weight, not too much, not too little, just enough to feel grounded. And then, everything becomes still again. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel empty, but complete. From here, the room feels even quieter than before. The faint light from the hallway is now only a thin line near the floor, slowly dimming as your eyes adjust further to the darkness. You remain seated. There is nothing demanding your attention. No movement to follow. No sound to interpret. Only the soft presence of the room around you. The table nearby stands quietly, holding the unlit candle, waiting without expectation. The window remains dark, offering no view, only a sense of the night continuing beyond it. Time feels less defined here. Not faster, not slower, just softer, as though it no longer needs to be measured. You exhale gently without noticing. And in that quiet breath, something in the room seems to settle even more deeply, as if it was waiting for that exact moment of stillness. Your thoughts begin to loosen. Not disappearing, just becoming less important. And as the bed supports you in that quiet way, your attention begins to drift naturally again. This time, no longer toward the room itself, but toward the calm that begins to settle within you.
For a while, even that awareness starts to soften. The room remains unchanged around you, the bed steady beneath you, the walls quiet, the faint outline of the doorway still resting open in the distance. But slowly, everything feels a little more removed, a little more distant, as though the house is no longer something you are observing, but something you are simply part of. Outside, the night continues in its own way, not loud, not noticeable, just existing beyond the window, beyond the walls, beyond any need to be understood. Inside, the air feels heavier now, not in an uncomfortable way, but in the sense that everything has finally come to rest. Even the smallest sounds seem to disappear. No creak from the floorboards, no shift of fabric, no distant movement from another room. Only stillness. The kind that doesn't ask for attention because it already has it. You adjust slightly on the bed without thinking. A small, natural movement. The mattress responds gently, then settles again as if it has always been in this exact shape. Your hands rest where they are. Your shoulders ease down. There is nothing left to arrange, nothing left to prepare. The candle on the small table remains unlit, and somehow that feels right. The room does not need more light. It already holds enough quiet on its own. Your breathing continues at an easy pace, unforced, steady, almost blending into the silence around you. And as the last traces of awareness about the room begin to fade just a little more, the boundaries between where you are and what you are feeling start to gently soften, as if the house itself is no longer separate from your rest, but quietly guiding you into it.
The sense of room begins to feel less defined now. The bed, the walls, the doorway left slightly open behind you, all of it remains, but none of it asks for attention anymore. It simply exists in the background, like something far away and unimportant. Even your thoughts begin to slow. Not all at once, not in any noticeable way, more like a gradual loosening, where each thought takes a little longer to form, and then a little less reason to stay. The silence supports that feeling. It doesn't press in, it holds space. You remain still, and that stillness starts to feel natural, almost effortless. There is no part of you needing to move or decide or respond to anything. The house outside this room continues its quiet presence. Somewhere far below, it still exists. Hallways, sitting room, hearth, now distant in memory rather than space. The warmth from earlier feels like it belongs to another moment entirely. Here, everything is softer, slower, further away. Your breathing becomes more even without intention. Each inhale and exhale blending gently into the atmosphere until it feels less like something you are doing and more like something that is simply happening. The bed continues to hold you without change. No shift, no sound, just steady support. And as your awareness begins to thin at the edges, not disappearing, but fading gently like light at the end of evening, the final sense that remains is not of the room, but of calm. Quiet, steady calm, spreading softly through everything, until even that begins to drift further away, and sleep slowly takes its place. Now there is very little left to follow. No clear thoughts forming. No sense of time passing in any measurable way. Only a soft awareness of being here. Resting.
and nothing more. The room is still present, but it no longer feels separate from you. The bed, the faint darkness around it, the quiet air, all of it blends into one gentle, unbroken feeling of calm. Even that sense begins to thin. Not suddenly, just gradually, like a tide moving out without sound. Your body feels heavier now, though not in a way that presses down, more like it has finally stopped needing to hold itself in any particular way. Everything can rest. Everything is allowed to soften. The faint outline of the doorway in the distance is barely noticeable now. The small details of the room fade into one another. Edges, shapes, shadows, all becoming less distinct, less important. There is no need to focus on anything at all. Not the bed beneath you, not the air around you, not even the idea of the house itself. Each breath comes and goes on its own, quiet and steady, as if it belongs more to the room than to you. And somewhere in that gentle in-between space, where awareness is still present but no longer active, sleep begins to arrive, not as an event, not as a moment, but as something slow, natural, and entirely unforced. The kind of sleep that does not need to be noticed to begin. And as everything continues to soften, even that awareness begins to fade, until there is only quiet remaining, and nothing else asking to be held.
Only quiet, only rest, and then even that begins to fade. There is a moment where nothing new appears and nothing old continues in any clear way. It is not emptiness, it is simply less. Less thought, less awareness, less separation between what is you and what is around you. The sense of the room is still there in the softest possible way, but it no longer holds shape. The bed is no longer a defined object, just a feeling of support that continues without question. The air is no longer something you notice, only something you are gently held within. Everything becomes quiet in layers. One layer of awareness softens, then another, each one loosening without effort, without resistance. Time stops feeling like something that moves forward. It becomes irrelevant, like a concept that no longer needs to be used. There is no longer a sense of waiting, no anticipation of what comes next. Even the idea of next begins to dissolve. What remains is a very soft presence, not thinking, not observing, just existing in a calm, unshaped way. The house, the room, the night outside, all of it is no longer separate scenes or places. If they exist at all now, they exist only as a quiet impression, fading at the edges. Your breathing, if noticed at all, feels like part of something larger and slower, as if it belongs to the same stillness rather than to a single point of awareness. And then even that becomes less distinct. There is no clear crossing into sleep, no moment where something changes sharply, only a gentle continuation of fading until nothing needs to be followed anymore, nothing needs to be held, and everything becomes quiet in the most natural way possible. There is no longer a process to follow, no gradual movement from one state into another. Everything that once felt like a journey has already dissolved into something still and continuous,
What remains is very simple, very quiet, almost unnoticeable. There may still be a faint awareness, but it has no direction. It doesn't reach outward. It doesn't look for anything. It doesn't even recognize itself clearly anymore. It is just presence without effort. The feeling of the bed, the room, the house, the night outside, all of it has blended into one soft impression that no longer needs to be separated into parts. Nothing stands apart anymore. Nothing needs to be understood. Even time has fully stopped feeling relevant. There is no before and no after, only a calm stillness that does not change. Thoughts, if they appear at all, do not form into anything complete. They pass like distant echoes that never fully arrive, and so they quietly fade before they can be held. Breathing continues in the background of awareness, but even that feels distant now, like something happening far away, not requiring attention. And slowly, gently, even the sense of you begins to soften. Not disappearing suddenly, not ending, just becoming less defined, less separate, less active. Like a light that doesn't switch off, but simply stops needing to shine. There is nothing left to hold, nothing left to follow, nothing left to return to, only a deep, even quiet that has no edge, no center, and no need to be noticed. And in that final softness, everything continues exactly as it is.
In this place, even the idea of rest becomes unnecessary. There is no longer a difference between being awake and being asleep. No boundary remains clear enough to notice. Everything has softened into the same quiet field. No sound reaches in. No thought rises with intention. No movement asks to begin. It is as if the entire world, house, room, night, and all distance beyond it, has gently stepped back, leaving only stillness behind. And even that stillness is not something you observe anymore. It simply is. If there is any awareness left at all, it is very faint, like the memory of a feeling rather than the feeling itself. It does not focus. It does not reach. It does not return. It just drifts without direction. There is no sense of position now, no clear here to be in. The bed, the room, even the body itself no longer present themselves as separate things. They are part of the same quiet softness that fills everything equally. Time does not move forward. It does not pause. It does not exist in a way that matters anymore. Only a gentle continuity remains, like a long, unbroken breath that never began and does not end. And in that continuity, there is nothing to interpret, nothing to respond to, nothing to become aware of. Even awareness itself becomes less defined, fading so gradually that it cannot be marked or noticed. What remains is not absence, it is simply complete quiet. A kind of stillness that does not need to be maintained because nothing exists that could disturb it. And so everything continues in this deep, even calm, without effort, without direction, and without end. There is nothing left that asks to be noticed. Not because anything has been lost, but because nothing is required anymore. The quiet does not deepen because it is already as deep as it can be. It does not expand because there is no space it needs to fill. It simply remains, steady in its own gentle way. If anything still lingers, it is extremely soft, almost indistinguishable from stillness itself. A faint sense of presence, without shape, without edges, without definition. It does not move forward. It does not drift backward. It does not change at all. And because of that, there is no contrast left to notice anything against. Everything becomes one continuous calm. Even the idea of experience begins to fade, as if it no longer has anything to attach itself to. There is no observer holding on to it, no story forming around it, no sense of separation between what is happening and what is aware of it. There is only quiet. Not a quiet that arrives, but one that was always here. If there are any traces of the house, the room, the night, or the bed, they are no longer remembered as places or objects. They are simply part of the same stillness, no longer distinct enough to be named. And in this absence of distinction, nothing feels incomplete. Nothing feels missing. Nothing needs to become anything else. Even the smallest hint of thought cannot fully form before it gently dissolves again, leaving no trace behind. There is only the soft continuation of calm, without beginning, without change, and without effort. And in that gentle, endless stillness, everything simply remains as it is, quietly, completely, at rest. Now, even the sense of rest feels like something far away. Not because anything has changed suddenly, but because even subtle awareness has softened further, like a light slowly lowering until it no longer defines shapes at all. If there is any impression remaining of the house, it is no longer something structured or clear. No rooms, no stairs, no doors. Only a very distant feeling, like a memory that never fully forms, and even that continues to fade. There is no effort in this fading, no direction, no intention behind it. It simply happens in the same gentle way everything else has been softening, quietly, evenly, without interruption. Nothing tries to hold itself together anymore. There is no need for continuity, no need for awareness to stay aware. Even the faintest sense of observing dissolves into something more indistinct until there is no clear point from which anything is being experienced. What remains is not emptiness and not presence in the usual sense. It is something even simpler than that. A quiet that does not define itself. A stillness that does not recognize itself. Time, which had already lost meaning, is now completely irrelevant. There is no passing moment, no lingering moment, no next moment waiting to arrive. Only an evenness that does not shift. And in that evenness, nothing reaches outward anymore. Nothing returns inward. Everything that once felt like structure, thought, space, sensation, awareness, has gently softened into the same indistinguishable calm. There is nothing to follow, nothing to return to, nothing to continue. Only a quiet that has always been here and continues without needing to be noticed at all, endlessly gentle, endlessly still. Now even the idea of endlessly begins to lose meaning, because there is no longer a sense of something continuing forward to measure it against. No beginning that leads here, no path that arrived here, no awareness that needs to confirm anything at all. Everything that once helped define experience has softened away. Thoughts do not form anymore, not because they are stopped, but because there is nothing for them to attach to. No structure to build on, no direction to move toward. And so they simply do not appear in any meaningful way. If there is still any trace of sensation, it is so faint that it no longer distinguishes itself from silence. It blends into the same calm field where everything else has already settled. There is no inside or outside now. No room holding a presence. No body holding awareness. no world held at a distance. Only a single, even quiet that does not divide itself into parts. And because there is no division, there is nothing to observe, nothing to interpret, nothing to become aware of. Even the sense of being present becomes unnecessary. It gently fades, not as an event, but as a natural release of something that no longer needs to remain active. There is no transition point, no final step, only a soft dissolving of anything that once required attention. And what remains cannot really be described as something happening. It is closer to nothing needing to happen at all. A calm so complete that it does not announce itself. A stillness so natural that it does not need recognition. And in that quiet beyond thought and time, everything continues without change, without boundary, and without end. Not because anything has been removed, but because nothing is needed anymore for anything to take shape. The calm is no longer something that spreads or deepens. It simply is, without direction, without movement, without contrast. Even the idea of depth feels distant now, like a concept that once made sense but no longer applies. If anything remains at all, it is not something that can be separated from the stillness around it. There is no center here, no edge, no point of observation. Everything has become evenly quiet in a way that does not require recognition. Thoughts, which once moved gently in and out of awareness, no longer find a place to begin. There's no structure for them to appear in, no sense of direction for them to follow, and so they do not form. Sensation itself is no longer divided into parts. There is no here experiencing anything there, only a continuous calm that does not shift or respond. And even the sense of continuity begins to soften until it is no longer something that can be noticed. Time does not pass. It does not pause. It simply has no role anymore. What remains cannot be measured because there is nothing separate enough to measure it against. It is not silence as the absence of sound. It is not darkness as the absence of light. It is something more complete than both, where distinctions no longer arise. And in that complete quiet, there is nothing to begin, nothing to continue, and nothing to end. And yet, even that gentle understanding slowly becomes unnecessary. There is no moment where it changes, no point where something stops or something starts. It simply becomes quieter in a way that cannot be followed. The sense of presence, already very faint, no longer defines itself even as presence. There is no need for it to be recognized in any form. Everything that once gave structure to experience, time, space, thought, awareness, has fully dissolved into a single, even stillness. Not layered, not deepened, just whole. If there is anything at all that could be called experience, it does not move or shift. It does not arrive or leave. It does not appear in contrast to anything else. It is simply the absence of distinction itself. No separation between what is felt and what is not felt. No boundary between awareness and rest. No line dividing anything at all. Even the idea of quiet becomes too specific to describe it, because quiet implies something that could be broken, and here nothing can be broken. Nothing can change state. Nothing can become different from what it already is. Everything remains in a single, unbroken calm that does not need to be maintained. There is no effort in it, no awareness holding it together, no direction guiding it. And because of that,
There is nothing to return from and nothing to return to. Only a continuous, gentle stillness that has no beginning, no center, and no end. Just quietly remaining exactly as it is.
And even remaining begins to feel like too much meaning, because nothing here is holding itself in place. There is no effort keeping anything steady, no awareness watching over anything, no thread connecting one moment to another. If moments still exist at all, they do not stand apart from each other. They do not arrive or leave. They do not form a sequence that can be followed. They are simply not separate. The sense of structure has fully dissolved now. What once might have been called experience no longer has edges to define it. There is no contrast between movement and stillness, because movement itself has no reference point anymore. Everything is evenly quiet, not layered, not deepened, not expanding, just complete in a way that does not ask to be understood. Even the faintest trace of awareness, if it could be called that, does not focus or observe. It does not reach outward. It does not turn inward. It does not turn at all. It is no longer doing anything, and so it cannot be separated from what it is within. There is no distinction left between what is present and what is not. No difference between silence and something that could break silence. No boundary between being and not needing to be. And in that complete absence of separation, nothing needs to continue, nothing needs to pause, nothing needs to resolve. Only a softness remains, so gentle it does not announce itself as anything at all. And in that softness, there is only quiet, not arriving, not ending, just the softest silence, without shape, without name, and without end. And now even the sense of remaining gently fades, not as something that stops, not as something that ends, but as something that no longer needs to be noticed at all. There is no awareness holding anything together, no thread of thought continuing in the background, no feeling of presence observing anything else. Everything has already softened beyond the need for separation. If there is anything at all, it does not define itself as anything. Not silence, not darkness, not stillness. Because all of those depend on comparison. And here, there is nothing to compare. No sound that could be absent, no light that could be missing, no movement that could be paused. Only a complete, even softness where nothing stands apart. The idea of time no longer applies in any way. There is no now that follows up before, and no after waiting to arrive. Everything that could be placed in sequence has already dissolved into the same unbroken calm. There is no center, no edge, no distance. And without distance, there is nothing to observe, nothing to return to, and nothing to become aware of. Even the faintest trace of awareness, if it could be called that, no longer points anywhere. It does not turn inward or outward. It does not move at all. It simply is not separate from the stillness itself. And in that final, gentle quiet, there is nothing left to follow, nothing left to hold, and nothing left to continue. Only a soft, complete stillness that does not need to be noticed in order to exist. Quiet, whole, and endlessly at rest.